Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome everyone to Lunch Break with Lea Kannar-Lichtenberger. We are so happy to have her here joining in live from the research vessel Falcore, which you will hear more about in a moment. My name is Julia Buntain-Howell, and I am the Director of SCIAR Initiative. This Lunch Break series we started at the beginning of last year, and it's been a really wonderful way to connect across geographies during this time of isolation. I think Lea is probably the furthest artist that we've ever had on our program, so I'm really happy to have her here. To tell you a bit about Lea, she is an Australian contemporary artist who disseminates her research and artistic vision as an artist at large by presenting her response and advocacy for environmental issues. Her investigations into evolution, contemporary society, and the impact of tourism on island environments has seen Lea do on-site examinations through immersive residencies or ecotourism inquiries in many places, including the South Shetland Islands, Faroe Islands, Lord Howe Islands, Galapagos Islands, etc. Lea creates artworks and installations that examine a window into the impact of the Anthropocene and contemporary consumerism on the viewed utopian destination. Lea has disseminated this research and her unique perspective through lectures, paper presentations, and peer-reviewed journals. Her degrees in fine arts in Masters of Studio Arts and Masters of Fine Arts are from the University of Sydney. And she's held multiple residencies, including at the School of Visual Arts in New York, which were both pivotal to her artistic practice. She has also exhibited widely at many places, including Griffith University Queensland, and won prizes for her artwork from around the world. Again, she's currently the artist in residence aboard the RV Falkor in their Artist at Sea program. We have a representative from that program, from the Schmidt Ocean Institute, Hannah Nolan, who I will let kind of introduce this really unique program that we've been happy to support and be friends with over the past couple of years. So take it away, Hannah.
Thank you so much, Julia. As previously said, my name is Hannah Nolan. I'm on the communications team for the Schmidt Ocean Institute. Schmidt Ocean Institute was founded in 2009 and strives to advance the frontiers of ocean research through technological information, operational support, and open sharing of information. So what that essentially means is we have our research vessel Falcore, and we offer free ship time aboard our research vessel to scientists and researchers. In exchange, they share their data openly. Our Artist at Sea program was established in 2015 because at Schmidt Ocean Institute, we firmly believe that artists offer a vital perspective and are in the perfect position to provide a deeper understanding of our ocean. The goal of our Artist at Sea residency is to provide a platform where scientists and artists are brought together aboard Falcore so that they can cross-pollinate ideas and offer new perspectives into one another's work. Lea Kannar-Lichtenberger is the 36th artist to voyage aboard Falcore, and we are honored to finally have her on board. As I'm sure she will tell you, it's been quite the adventure getting her to the ship. And with that, joining us from the Coral Sea Marine Park off of Queensland, Australia, Lea Kannar-Lichtenberger.
Good afternoon, everybody. So thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Julia. I want to begin my talk with an acknowledgement of the First Nation people of my home area of Sydney, Australia. They are the traditional owners of the country, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I recognise their continuing connection to the land, waters, and culture. I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, and acknowledge that they never relinquished sovereignty. As Hannah said, I'm currently the artist at sea on board the RV Falkor, and I am joining you from above the Selfridge Rise in the Coral Sea. So, who am I, you might ask? Like many artists, I have an eclectic background, no different from any others, but okay, maybe slightly different. It was in the 1980s that I will begin my talk, as it was during these times that my interest in the environment became, peaked. In 1989, at the age of 25, I became the first plant operator for Shell Refinery in their Clyde refinery in Sydney. I was only one of 2 petroleum plant operators in Australia at that time. Yes, that is me in the middle, holding the oversized pipe wrench, a trailblazer, you might say, in this all-male industry. And for 13 years, I worked here and collecting, among other things, the skill in crude oil processing and production, water treatment, firefighting, along with the tickets associated with the job. I currently hold an open boiler ticket, which sort of means I can boil an oversized kettle. I hold a first class steam, which means that I can boil a bigger kettle and use that steam in high pressure turbines for power generation. Along with the second class diesel and refrigeration, these combined with my other skills I have acquired over the time make my history quite a varied one. And in those times, a life which had begun to question how we are impacting on our environment. I don't remember when I have not been interested in the Australian landscape. I have been creating artworks for quite some time in traditional mediums, such as oil paints. In my exploration of this world from the bird's eye view, sort of more like a helicopter view, you might say, which allowed me to embrace the expansive nature of the Australian landscape. To the individual plight of wildlife, with my skills in traditional printmaking, this series, Beyond Memory, is an exploration of the Galapagos Islands and the history surrounding the Galapagos tortoise. From the trees that evoke a sense of the power of ages past, or the cliff top that creates an understanding of the sublime, these examinations explore the way with which we view the world as objects that creates an imbalanced perspective of our power over the land. It is this abuse of power where humans feel it is their right to terraform any landscape that does not meet their needs or pillage for profit that much of my art is about. The series of multiple prints explore the complexities surrounding the issues of what we lose when we transform bush to agriculture, or housing for that matter, and what do we gain. These works, early works of mine, are looking at the significance that whilst the government and the people in general continue to underrate the real level and real value of our natural landscapes and see them as vast, where in fact they're really, really tiny spaces of refuge for wildlife, there'll be no end of the clearing of the natural world for profit. And as a society, many people have a simplistic idea of what is nature. And I've been exploring it for some time. What is it? It is over there. It's a tree or a bush, an animal, a bird or aquatic life that we usually don't see. And in the age of the Anthropocene, my art practice examines how humans impact our world, both by their presence and indirectly by their lifestyle. And I have not just jumped on the climate change bandwagon. I've been interested in Australia, the landscape, and how humans have impacted on it for decades, both locally and globally. I was lucky enough in 2013 and 2014 to have consecutive residencies at the School of Visual Arts, Nature and Technology Laboratory with Susan Anker and Brandon Ballingy in New York. My time there was significant as I was studying for my Master of Fine Arts, and it informed my art practice in ways I would not have expected. In looking at creating metaphors for evolution, using the common and tree dandelion, I used my images from the microscopic examinations to extend the dialogue of my artistic voice, creating narratives about life and death. Connections of Life is part of a series of microscopic images that examines life's relationship to water, our most precious commodity, wasted in our race for the commodification of all things. All life, including our own cellular uniqueness, is being catalogued, not just archived, but scientifically interrogated to be used as building blocks for future research and cellular manipulation. In Connections of Life, I asked the viewer to reflect on water and its relationship to this biota. The curling shape of the dead tree dandelion, sectioned and stained in its memory of time, wraps around one water droplet, yet remains out of reach of another, this time the perfect sphere of water, representing the planet, connecting to the stuff of life. However, you know by the photograph that it is already dead. Water will not help its survival now. But what of others beyond our vision? This memory, coloured blue, like our vast oceans, connecting our water-rich world, invites you, the viewer, to bear witness. Colliding Worlds was also created during this time at School of Visual Arts. It continues this discussion about connection to all living things in a series of engraved petri dishes, depicting the visions of microscopic cellular examinations, text, human DNA coding, and prose to construct a bridge between science and the spirit, embracing life and death, science and the history of discovery. By using a black circular background to allow space and emptiness to surround the work, it appears as though viewed through an oversized microscope. You see the minutiae of existence catalogued below. Science and technology continue their creative watershed moments of discovery with little pause to ask questions of consequences. Colliding Worlds acts as a reminder of these questions. Whilst transmutation 3 forms another part of my analogy for evolution by using the cell from a tree dandelion, Sonchus canalensis, in an examination of our world, our blue-green planet reflected in the guise of a dandelion cell covered with human DNA. Fundamental to this understanding is that we and all of nature are in flux, and this is life in its primary raw state. The building blocks are mutating and infusing with our material world. While we continue to see the Anthropocene as a fixable catastrophe and not the reality of humanity on the brink of extinction, we will fail to save ourselves and other species from the impacts of humanity's short-sightedness. Humanity may not survive, but the Earth, which Transmutation 3 reflects upon, will in some guise. It will continue to change and evolve. My recent chapter, published in the book titled Using the Visual and Performing Arts to Encourage Pro-Environmental Behaviour, released last year by Cambridge Press, is a reflection on humanity's impact on fragile environments through consumerism. My time with the oil industry has provided me with a greater understanding of environmental ramifications, and the drive for making my artworks give a voice to that which has no voice in our world, and to create greater awareness of how our presence impacts on our biosphere. The remainder of this talk will look at my research from 2015 to present and resulting artworks created from these on-site investigations. In the Galapagos Islands, Ecuador, Lord Howe Island, 600 kilometres off the New South Wales, Australia coast, and Deception Island off Antarctica. These islands that sit in the South Pacific are in themselves microcosms of our planet, which by their isolation, each island, the surrounding waters and its wildlife remain virtually invisible to our contemporary lives. It is my research in these and other isolated places that my concern relating to human impact is explored through artworks that engage the viewer on a personal level. By wanting people to truly consider the way we as humans are terraforming our land, I want questions to be raised, to create artworks which can transform everyone's awareness or lifestyle. I examine how we are not alone on the planet and our lives require a more holistic view of our interaction with nature. For my Master of Fine Art, I created a large installation that exposes the issues surrounding how we are treating the environment. Gagging in Dystopia, an installation that not only has the reason for traveling to these wondrous places projected across its surface, but also confronts you with the physical effect our presence has both on-site and remotely. Plastics and the importance of this problem, along with rising sea temperatures affecting our oceans, have become an integral part of my art practice. One part of this installation was Towards Dystopia, designed to engage the viewer with visions of the islands we hold dear to the imagination, a kind of utopian destination. A water installation that works to connect both the plague of desalination plants that are increasing globally as fresh water becomes scarce, but specifically from the Galapagos Islands to Lord Howe Island. The macro and micro consumerist pollution that affects our world is examined. When entering the space, you are confronted with the smell. Warmed, heated plastic pervades the space as the tea urn operates as a simplification for increasing ocean temperatures. It works to heat the water that passes from the fish tank, a dystopian snapshot of our oceans, through to the oversized Petri dish filled with ceramics based on Favia speciosa, a coral unique to the reefs of Lord Howe Island under threat from ocean warming. This Petri dish acts as a trope for the science that created all these problems and the science that we hope will save our species. The flow of water in the South Pacific is signified by the movement of salted water through transparent piping from the Galapagos to Lord Howe, a circulation mimicking the currents of connecting our worlds. And with its continuous heating, the tea urn that represents our place within the collective community, the mediocrity, the repetition, that by its repeated destroys, moving into the banality of our lives, as this tea urn warms the water and the water becomes rank, not only with bacteria, but the smells of heated plastic permeating the room. It speaks of one possible future, an inescapable plastic presence with the putrefaction of the surrounding world. In the past 5 years, the Great Barrier Reef has experienced 3 major coral bleaching events, with the most recent 2020 being more severe and widespread than previous events in 2016 and 2017. And with each bleaching event, the nurseries of our oceans are increasingly under threat. To create a discourse and to reflect on the problems facing our most fragile and vital ecosystems, I used Favia speciosa. No, it's not a spell from Harry Potter, although it does sound like one, but a coral that is native to Lord Howe Island off the New South Wales east coast of Australia. To inform the shape of my ceramics for several installations, from inside the Petri dish in Towards Dystopia, to my examinations of the reefs in Septum Oceanus Despoiled, an installation that explores the questions surrounding microplastics in the environment. Placed in the sands on Tamarama Beach near Sydney to begin a discussion of one of contemporary society's most pressing problems, microplastics. Its impact on our biosphere and via the food chain on all populations of our world. Embedded within the surface of these works is text, the litany of debris collected from one walk on 3 beaches of Lord Howe Island, listed here in various sizes from that which is visible to the microscopic. Septum Oceanus Despoiled, or 7 seas ruined. There are 7 ceramics, which not only signify the number of continents, 7, and the number of seas on our world, 7, but also the significance of the number itself. It's seen as the number between life and death, the seeker, the thinker, that takes nothing at face value. These 7 ceramics sit as a declaration that there should be no compromise in the human responsibility to care for all species and land on this planet. From my journey to Antarctica, I created this 5-panel transparent installation, or pentaptych, Dissipation, exposing the glacier of Livingston Island, Antarctica. It examines the squandering of our planet's resources as it continues to gather speed. Dissipation is a work that is a reminder of the places so hidden from our daily lives that we forget the catastrophic future that is looming beyond the melting polar regions. Livingston Island is besieged by the fallout from Deception Island's volcanic activity, which smears the turquoise surface of centuries of glacial accumulation, with constant reminders that not only the violence, but also the fragility of nature. Livingston, I presume, is a 16-part photographic discourse surrounding our very presence in the Antarctic region. The earliest of explorers would first glimpse their quarry through a telescope, then venture forth to claim it, stick a flag in it, and then the final outrage is to strip it of all its worth. This unedited photographic series situates the viewer within the colonialist vision. That point of initiation, because what is to follow could only be describing as our need to go pierce in the very corners of our world, to claim our territory under the guise of going to, oh, we're just going to have a look and embrace the beauty that is there. Considering the impact of contemporary society on remote places, I created Distorted Truths in a contemplation of my journey to Antarctica in 2017. A monolith of 130 kilo ice filled with the debris that I collected from Telephone Bay on Deception Island, Antarctica. Distorted Truths is an artwork that engages this issue of the melting polar regions in a more visceral manner, an ephemeral and permanent examination that creates an intersection between our contemporary lives and the natural environment that reflects the distorted vision of our modern civilization. As the ice melts over several days, it manifests the unseen glacial melt that is occurring at our poles. The disgorging of these items as the melt continues speaks of colonialism in a reflection of climate change. Sitting in an oversized petri dish, overlaid with projections of a melting glacier, Distorted Truths is designed to evoke a greater sense of distortion and return the environmental gaze upon the way society uses and distorts its own vision to not see what it knows to be true. It is not just our impact from a distance that's examined in Distorted Truths, but our presence in the ecosystem. Exploring the role of contemporary society in our warming world and how remote places such as Deception Island, Antarctica, is being affected. I have continued to explore this examination of ice and ocean debris in my more recent work, Cumulative Distress Effect, by considering how our contemporary lives intersect with the natural world. Images can only do so much to give us an understanding of the problem and the scale of debris in the oceans. At the center of this work are 6 150 kilo blocks of ice that have each been embedded with just a portion of the debris that was collected by me from the beaches of Lord Howe Island, and are sequentially placed into a petri dish surrounded by a fishing net. As each block melts, it disgorges its contents into the dish, and every 3 days, a new block is placed on the plate in the dish to continue this process of melt and disgorging. When all blocks have melted and the debris accumulated in the dish, it ultimately creates a visual manifestation of the ocean plastic problem that becomes more tangible to those who view this work over time. I remained with this work for several days, engaging with its passing audience. And when one lady commented, "Oh, that all the plastic comes from just 3 rivers in Asia," saying, "I know, I read it," I had to sort of dispel this notion and tell her that as this debris was collected from the east coast of Australia and not the west coast where we were standing, it was extremely unlikely to be from Asia, as that debris would have had to travel through an incredibly narrow passage, the Torres Strait, between us and Papua New Guinea. So that what we were viewing was in fact our own waste washing upon our own shores, that we are unable to pass off as somebody else's problem. But it is what happens to this and other plastics of its kind that are exposed in unhappy feet. This plastic remnant found in the penguin colonies of Deception Island, Antarctica, this is all that remains of one penguin. An unassuming individual that perhaps thought it was getting an easy meal, a fish caught in a net. And this meal had dire consequences as the penguin had to consume the entire net. And there, crammed in, filling its internal cavity of this poor creature, the penguin is long since dead and leaves behind this legacy that creates a visual outline of negative space of its organs, from its throat to its anus. Unhappy feet at 2 meters tall is a confronting reminder of the results of just one piece of plastic in our oceans filled with billions of pieces. From all those journeys, I'm now back on the high seas again with the Schmidt Ocean Institute on board the research vessel Falkor. And the vessel and these scientists are continuing to map the ocean floor as part of an international program to map the globe by 2030. Among them are others working with bird identification and counting, along with microplastic sampling. My journey with this group is in many ways very different from others I have taken. One, I actually have more space with which to engage my art practice for the start. I am working on a project to map our journey in a more rustic fashion, nothing high tech, just a piece of graphite, weights and bungee rope, making marks on a roll of Japanese bamboo paper. Over the 30 days of this journey, I will accumulate a narrative of movement on this 10-meter roll of paper, interspersing blue pencil when we are doing turns and charcoal when we have rougher seas. However, I must say, touch wood, I haven't had to use the charcoal yet, unlike my Deception Island journey. On each journey I have taken to the high seas, I have produced a series of drawings called From the Bow. And these drawings are about what lay ahead of the ship every day, and the view that lay beyond the bow, the vista that greeted me every morning, I capture as a meditation of place, and in this instance, the Galapagos Islands from the bow. So when I realized the first day at sea that I would have a problem, as this was going to be my view for the next 30 days, I sort of had to change my perspective, as my ability to capture changing sea nuances was going to prove a bit too tricky. So I decided to use the multi-beam sonar that was collecting the sea floor and use it as my muse. If I could not see above the waterline anything worth drawing, then I was going to work below the waterline. So working with Alicia, one of the scientists on board, we formulated a plan that the drawing would be a snapshot of the multi-beam was mapping for 1 hour between 6 and 7 a.m. each day. She would process the data for me, and every day I would work from one of these drawings and create my own interpretation of what was effectively invisible to me. These drawings are about one small part of my art practice. I have also been working with pinhole photography and have ideas for video works that I hope will give another perspective on our effect on the oceans and our impact. But these are yet to be completed. The final work I wish to share with you opened the Jane Goodall Symposium in 2016, Gagged, based on the work written by Carl Safina from Gaia, the Plastic Ocean, that were pivotal in its creation. The adult abruptly pumps out several thick boluses of food, semi-liquefied squid and purplish fish eggs, which the chick bolts down. These are his Carl Safina's words. And both pause. The chick renews its strive for more, and the adult arches her neck and is retching. Nothing comes more retching. Is something wrong? And slowly, the tip, just the tip of a green plastic toothbrush emerges in the bird's throat. The sight is surreal, so out of place, so wrong, that my racing mind interrogating my eyes over and over. Are you sure that's a toothbrush? With her neck arched, the mother cannot pass the straight toothbrush. She re-swallows it several times, repeats the attempt to bring it up, and each time she cannot fully pass it out. To bring it home to us, you do not need to see the actual toothbrush to see the distress here. Unable to use hands or arms to remove what is in its throat. Birds are not only gagged by our rubbish, but by the remoteness of place where these experiences happen, by their inability to understand that we have created a new debris that floats on the ocean waves, not organic, but of indigestible rubbish. It is the words of people like Pinar Yolders that have driven my investigations beyond the purely academic or scientific. We have complicated our relationship with life. Our very human culture overrides nature. Our capitalist biomass manufactures mountains of e-waste, beaches of tar, rivers of zinc, and oceans of plastic. We are an army of plastic surgeons giving the planet a new face, and we sit upon a precipice of time, a point of which will never come again, where we can all make a difference. I offer few solutions, but I hope by way of a visual interrogation to raise the viewer's consciousness. Thank you.
Wonderful,
Hopefully that
Lee.
wasn't too
No, thank you so much. That was wonderful. You can exit out of your slideshow or leave it on this page is fine. So we do have some questions in from the audience, so we'll get started with those. But I just wanted to say it's so wonderful to see really the breadth of your work. You clearly do not shy away from working in any medium that your ideas necessitate. And it makes me wonder, where you're headed next, so we can talk about that in a little bit. But to get to some of these questions first, we have a question in from one of our audience members named Amy, who is wondering about your experience in collaborating with scientists. Her question is not specific, but we do see this type of question quite frequently. If you have advice for our audience members out there about how to build successful collaborations with scientists. It's not an easy thing to do, and you have much experience in working with scientists in various ways, which you may or may not call a collaboration, but you're embedded within this scientific research vessel right now. So if you want to just speak for a little bit about your experience in collaborating and what works, what doesn't work, that would be great to hear about.
Oh, look, it's such an interesting question, that. And I suppose at the end of the day, it comes back to the individuals. There are some scientists out there that truly just see us as people who will, just visually describe what they want and are not really interested in collaborating. And that's fine. That's their journey. But there are others out there that really want to work with us. And I think if you find somebody like that, just grab hold, because they're, they are out there. As far as advice on how to find them, I think sometimes it's the luck of the draw. I can be in some places where the scientists literally, that's all they want. They just, they just want you to observe what they're doing. They don't want any interaction. And you just have to take that as that's part of that journey. But when you do find a scientist that is happy to be a collaborative journey, so much more can be created out of it. I think that whilst our academia sees art as science is more didactic, artists are more sort of, ephemeral, and certainly of a woman of my age, I'm just a lot of times seen as, the housewife who wanted to work in art by some scientists, that, to show them your worth is a little bit harder. I think being open and not being precious about exploring your art is probably one of the greatest things that you can learn as an artist, and everybody has a different perspective. I was working with a fellow, Carell, who's one of the technologists on board, and we were working with what the scientists were making, and part of this journey is ocean floor mapping. So what I have done is worked with Carell, and we're creating like these little 3D digital images of what we actually have mapped. So we came in one direction and then mapped that, and then went out the other way on top of a seamount here. And so, the scientists were sort of like, oh, well, that isn't a perspective that I'd thought of looking at that type of journey. They're looking at the whole and not the individual. So by that instance, by sort of having some way of showing them that, your creative work can bring in to their work something different, is probably about the only thing we can really do. And the rest is up to them.
Yeah, I think it's such a good, it's so good to bring up the point of the value of the artist perspective, and illuminating that value, to a scientist. Maybe they had never thought, oh, you're going to bring in something totally different to the picture, which may in fact come back to my own research in the way that I approach, a particular problem. We see this time and time again with artists asking questions which no one else will. Artists are kind of trained to do that. We have a follow-up question, just to stay on this topic for a little bit longer. A question from Melissa. She asks, coming from the scientist's perspective, I'm wondering if you could summarize what you as the artist are hoping to get from a scientist collaborator. How do both partners get away from using art as a tool for science communication and rather towards a real interdisciplinary approach to real world problems?
Now that's a big question. Very loaded, incredibly loaded question.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's having an open mind. We seem to have lost that capacity, and I'm talking from both sides, from the science and from the artists. I mean, we are, as artists, not the be all and end all of the way in which to go forward and to put out information, and same with scientists. You know, I was at a recent conference, the Eco Arts conference in Wollongong, before COVID. Everything was before COVID. And there was a woman there who's been doing some collaborative research with scientists on a fungus that's killing some of our native trees. And unfortunately for her, she mentioned to the scientists, you know, thinking outside the box, she's looking through the microscope, she's seeing these other avenues, and she's saying, hang on a minute, this aphid seems to still have the active fungus in its gut when it's going along. And they're saying, oh, well, we're not looking at aphids. We're looking at a different sporing situation. And so there is an instance where the scientist was really not interested in a collaboration, because in order to get funding, it makes it very difficult sometimes for scientists to step outside the research box, because they have to tick a set of guidelines, which doesn't necessarily always allow for going and taking something out of left field and researching and having a look at how that affects what they're doing. But yeah, I don't know whether that has answered the question at all, or if I've gone down a completely new rabbit hole.
No, I mean, you made the point about each partner in a collaboration, or every partner needing to have a certain level of openness. And I think that, you know, the idea of openness it's a simple idea in that it's straightforward, but it is so, like you said, it's kind of a lost art with the increase in specialization that every discipline is experiencing right now, including the arts. It's really easy to have tunnel vision, despite the fact that we all know and understand that our work, no matter if it's on the arts or sciences side of things, our work exists within a larger picture. So of course, having tunnel vision, you're still within this picture and need to consider those things.
And I think that also, I mean, and that's all absolutely valid, Julia. And what I also think is that some of the greatest scientific minds in history have all been those that embraced art in their scientific practice. You know, you can go back to Da Vinci and beyond, and the even more recent, you know, people who, because they had that a capacity to look with a different kind of creative mind, were able to see, like Einstein's creative mind. I mean, who would have thought, you know, he could come up with so many fabulous ideas. And it's that seems to, our academic world seems to shut down. And so because they've shut down that capacity to be creative and put us into a separate box, I think that's part of the problems that we're facing now.
Absolutely. So all we can do is combat those problems outside of the kind of the typical academic setting, which you certainly do on a regular basis. To move on to another topic, a question in from Holly. Holly asks, what would you recommend to teachers and educators on how to teach about our interconnected relationship with nature, rather than thinking of nature as other?
Oh, you know, yeah, it's, I think that currently they're doing microplastic, looking at microplastics on board the Falcore. One of the interesting things that they've been finding is in the deep, deep ocean, they're finding microfibers. I think that from my perspective, and this is just, and I really have to iterate here, it's my personal perspective on the oceans and on the life in the oceans, is that to try and see things from, certainly from the ocean perspective, how our one little bit of plastic, like in Unhappy Feet, created distress and death for one creature. And so when you look at the microplastic situation, where they're finding microplastics in the deepest, deepest parts, and it appears that that's where it's all sinking. Well, that's all going into, all your microscopic organisms, which start at the base of the food chain and move up. So we are going to be increasingly eating more fish that have been eating things that have been eating plastics. I talk about the impact of plastics to the kids when, especially to school kids, when they come around when I'm exhibiting in the open, and I sort of ask them, like, especially the ones that are standing there with a plastic drink bottle in their hand, and I say, well, that plastic drink bottle has all these chemicals in it, and just because you think that you're putting your plastic in a bin that may be recycled, it may not be recycled. So for me, myself, if I want something to drink and I'm not home and I don't have a trusty water bottle with me, I only buy something that comes in aluminium or glass. And if that means I have to walk in 2 or 3 shops to find something in aluminium or glass, then I'll do it. But I ask them to consider what plastic things that they are giving to their friends, because the last time I was talking to a group was before Christmas, and I was saying, okay, so think about it. Are you giving them something that's completely made of plastic? And where do you think that that's going to end up? Because if it doesn't end up in landfill, it's going to end up in the oceans. And there's a group in Australia, I think it's probably global, called Take 3. And that, to me, is a really great way of dealing with the plastic solution and bringing it back to the personal objective, which is, I'm not asking you to clean a park. I'm not asking you to just pick up one piece because, hey, that seems pointless. But if you pick up 3 pieces of plastic a day, or is it take 5 pieces of plastic a day, then you feel like, one, you've contributed, and if you're not walking past it, it doesn't take much to pick it up. And I know it's COVID now, and we're all sort of really scared about touching something that isn't ours. But if you have your own plastic bag, then turn it inside out, pick it up, put it in the bag. And then, or, other bag, doesn't have to be plastic, can be canvas, can be cotton, preferably. And just put these things and make sure that that these small items have ended up inside the correct, disposal way, rather than in our streams. So just because you're living in the middle of, the country area does not mean that the plastic that you see on the side of the street won't end up in the ocean, because when it rains, it'll go into the rivers and down the rivers and into the ocean. And
so yeah, perhaps kind of teaching this idea through case studies, examples, through the example of how plastic can go from your home all the way to the bottom of the Mariana Trench and then back up through the food chain onto your dinner plate. That really does bring the message home, I think, and makes it more palpable for those who don't live near a body of water. It might be harder to imagine how that could happen.
That also, and also now that microplastics are not just going into the microscopic organisms up into the fish and onto your plate, they're being entrained in the evaporation process as well. So, you know, the ocean is this vast body of water which evaporates up, and rain, and that's where our rain will come from. And it's in these rain clouds that we're now finding microplastics are starting to come. So it's truly now in our ecosystem. We can't get away from it. So we need to be more diligent about getting rid of it.
Absolutely. Another question in from Ruth. Ruth says, you work in very remote places, which most people have never seen and will never experience. How do wider audiences respond to the remoteness? Do you have the impression you can reach them, and do you feel you can get your message across?
Oh, look, I think I do. You know, the places that I'm going, a lot of it is, you know, is sort of bucket list kind of situations where people think, oh, well, one day when I have the money, I want to go there. And I think that we need to rethink how we visit these places. And I'm not saying that they should be hugely expensive places to, you know, they shouldn't up the price to make it harder for us to go to these remote places. But I think that we need to, like you can see in this photo of me, this is Deception Island, Antarctica, and it has this massive lot of debris. So, you know, why can't we be enforcing rules that when these cruise ships go down there, that they must bring back something, you know, there must be either the people that go there have to do some form of ecological cleanup. You know, why is it that we just have to go and look? Why can't we be involved in making sure that these places stay clean?
Absolutely. I love that idea. Like you said, why not? You're already there. Just pick something up on your way back.
Exactly. Totally. You know, why be separate from the nature that you're in? And I have friends who've always tried to do the right eco-tourist thing. And they're now looking at it going, well, maybe it's not so eco-tourist. Maybe now I have to do something a bit more if I want to enjoy these places. So that's part of why I do the work and why I go there. And it's until you're actually standing there with people who are just transient in their minds as well. You know, they're just going there, taking a few photos and going, oh, well, I can tick that off my bucket list. But until you see how that interaction truly impacts, we can't change the way we visit these places. And that's hopefully what I'm trying to do, is bring awareness to create change. I mean, you know, Galapagos Islands was voted in 2018 by Fedor's Travel Guide as being the #1 place not to go. So if, you know, if travel guides are saying don't go to the Galapagos because it's being overpopulated, there's way too many people traveling there, you know, I think we need to start taking notice of, but whenever there's $1 to be made, it's really a shocker. And Antarctica is the next wave of what's going to be happening to a pristine, well, it's not pristine. Okay, so if we look at that photo, there's nothing pristine about that Deception Island. And the fact that I picked debris up from the beach, there is nothing pristine about it. We are already there, you know, by either our physical presence or by the plastics that we're getting in the ocean.
That is such a good reminder. Some of these places do feel like, oh, well, they're so remote. How could we possibly have really impacted them beyond maybe the setup of a few, you know, scientific research stations? But clearly, our world is connected by our oceans, and plastic travels through the oceans. Well, we have to cut it off there with the questions. Thank you so much, Lee, for sharing your work. My experience of seeing this kind of broad view of your work has been so inspiring, and I'm sure our audience feels the same way. We had a question about how to find more out about you. So within the chat, I am sharing the link to Lee's website where you can access her work and publications and etc. I wanted to, so thank you, Lee, for coming on Zoom with us at a very odd time of the day for you. What is it, 3, 4 in the morning?
It's now 4 a.m. in the morning. I had to get up at 2 a.m. to get all bright-eyed and, you know, pluck the cheeks up and look all bushy-tailed. So you wouldn't think that I was.
You wouldn't think it. Similarly, thank you so much to the crew aboard the Falcore who made this internet connection and presentation possible. And thank you to the Schmidt Ocean Institute for coordinating with us and making this event possible as well. I'm going to do a quick plug.
There is a blog on their website.
Oh, great.
Oh, sorry, there is a blog today they're posting on their website a video put together about my time on the Falcore, which I should point out took me 4 attempts. It's my 4th attempt to be here because of COVID, medical problems, and not being able to get across the borders. I finally made it. And they've just been wonderful. I cannot speak more highly of them.
I'm so glad that you finally are there and making such interesting work. And so yes, Hannah from Schmidt says the video will be posted tomorrow in the US. Australia is a day ahead of us. There was a question about this particular event here. We always upload the recording of our lunch breaks with our presenters within a week or so onto our YouTube channel. So you can find us on YouTube at Sire Initiative. And we'll be sure to share it on social media as well. So yes, this talk will be available to anyone who wasn't able to join or wants to go back and take another look at Lee's work. I'm going to do a quick plug in the chat for an event that we're hosting next month. We're not hosting a lunch break next month because we have partnered with a few other organizations to host a one-day festival, not about anything happening on planet Earth, but rather about what is happening on exoplanets. So I hope that you can join us, all of you, for this exoplanetary festival that includes speakers and participants from all over the world, thinking about how we're going to treat other worlds once we're able to get there and understand their own nature and environment and how it's different from our own. So that's something to look forward to. It's an art, science, music festival of many kinds, and it's taking place within a virtual environment that you can access from your computer, from any mobile device. And that's on March 20th. But thank you again, Lee. It's so nice to connect with you from so far away, but feel closer, given that your whole talk really, underlined the fact that the world is very connected and nature connects us, and that's something that we really need to remember and take to heart. With that, I wish you the best of luck on the rest of your residency journey. And yeah, can't wait to see what you get up to next.
Thanks, Julia. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody. Take care.
Bye.